Sai Shravanam is a passionate musician, music engineer, producer, and entrepreneur with over 14 years of experience working with premier artists worldwide, including archiving and producing classical Indian music. He received recognition for his work on the Academy Award winning film Life of Pi and The Man Who Knew Infinity, and he has worked on cross cultural and experimental music projects. Sai is highly regarded in the Indian classical music arena. Further going into the discussion, because there's this humongous amount of information that eventually gets recorded, that eventually, and I think all of it was multi-track.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
So I think the next stage that comes into the process is probably mixing them, or rather, doing the needful when it comes to readying
Just
the
producing it,
information
yeah.
for the common people to listen or to be broadcastable. And that is what my next point of discussion is, that the importance of translation of studio monitors. I believe both of us have been loyal to the KH series. KH series has been, KH120s were the first ever monitors I bought. And they have been the only monitors so far. And because I have been very strongly affiliated to the KH sound now, and I believe that you also have been very well in tune with the KH series monitors. I would like to know that how important is the translation of a source to the monitors important, first of all, and where does the translation of monitors, studio monitors, stand for you in importance as a music producer, engineer, a musician? What is your take on that?
For me, a studio monitor is so important that there are two facets that it should help me with. Number one, I have to feel inspired when I listen to something that I do. Number two, how efficient can I be so that it saves me time? That's number two. Number three is translation. But the first two are something that is very important for me, because the more productive I am, the more inspired I am, the better music goes out to people. The better music goes out to people, the more inspired you are to work harder for your next project.
Correct.
So, as regards to translation, we can come to it. It is very important that a monitor has to translate. But 90% of the people, all the youngsters today, forget about the first two. How inspired are you to listen to something that you do? So you have incredible microphones, you have a fantastic room, you capture very well, you have fantastic sound cards, beautiful artists, wonderful instruments. How do you hear them back?
Exactly.
So as a music producer, when you're composing something, as a composer, arranger, someone like you, your next idea, so this is not something that you're writing music and then just asking an orchestra to play. In Indian music, it's extempo, it's ideas, it's inspiration, it's the moment.
Correct.
So it's the same as once Ustad Zakir Hussain told, somebody asked him, you're playing the same teen tal for so many years, aren't you bored playing every concert? And then he says, please do know one thing, it's the same sun that rises in the east and sets in the west. It's the same sun that comes in the morning and sets in the evening. Are you tired of seeing it daily in your life? You're never, right?
Correct.
And that is how it is with music. Every take is so different. It's never the same. It's the same bowl, same note, same singer. It's different. Now, in the listening room, when I'm sitting and recording something, or when I've recorded something and I bring back, my next idea comes from what I hear. Because as I said again when I started my talk today, it's your perception, it's something that will lead you to your next step. It's not the notes, it's not the music, it's the sound for me.
Correct.
For me, it's just sound.
Correct.
Simple. It's blatant sound. So, monitors, I've I've not bought a home. I've not bought anything for myself because everything has gone into buying speakers and microphones. And I'm not shy to say this on screen. People may think Sai is this, Sai is that. He has, you go see a wiki page, etc. All that is different. But I still don't own a house. I stay with my father. But I wouldn't mind doing that because I've gone through the rigor of investing so much on microphones and speakers and been through, I would say, most of the brands that are into professional audio. My first exposure was Klein and Himmel.
Okay.
So I have this wonderful friend in the US who was my inspiration, sound engineer. His name is William Rogers. He's worked on wonderful records across the world. He introduced me and he said, why don't you listen to the Klein and Himmel's 0300. When I heard them, it was so musical. Something that I felt. And I used to carry my recordings, which was sitar and tabla and veena,
Correct.
mridangam.
Correct.
And nothing would sound the same after the recording. As an artist, I would be so happy playing the instrument and then recording it.
Correct.
But when I played back, let us be very honest. If I get 60% of it, I'm very happy. But something just doesn't come right. Okay. Then I went into the rundown of flat frequency, the most neutral monitors. Amazing monitors, and then kept buying different monitors. And I'm a very restless person. I seek. I have an OCD for perfection, for excellence. Despite spending so much money, if I'm not happy, I would sell and then search for the next one.
Correct.
And I still remember everybody in my house would say, it's just 4 months, 5 months old, new one, and you're selling it. I would say, I'm not married to it. I can't relate to it. And it was very difficult for them to relate to me. I'm sure you can understand what I'm saying. So this process kept going on and on and on. And then I bought a second-hand KH110.
Okay.
It was on a website, a local Indian website that would sell used goods.
Okay.
I found the KH110. I was like, oh, it's the same family. And then almost 12 years back, I got it for pennies and I would keep it in the studio as my second monitor. Actually, this is an evolution, this one.
Okay.
The 120A is evolved from the KH110.
Okay.
So Klein and Himmel was the company that was acquired by Neumann.
Correct.
And they retweaked the whole speakers, still maintaining the integrity of the original. So I worked with the original. And I continue to have it in my studio. Even now, you can see in all the pictures. That would make the flute sound like a flute. A sitar sound like a sitar. A tabla actually sound exactly like it would be in the naked ear. That kept impressing me. Because for me, I, as a record producer, had a very important commitment when it came to professional business. What is it? You have an artist, they are singing inside the studio. They would come out and say, play, can I listen to what I do? And if it is not going to sound right,
Correct.
they are not going to come back to you.
Correct.
So listening environment is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
That is how KH110, a tiny speaker, would be the most sought after speaker, and artists who are legends, some of the top artists in the industry like Bombay Jayashree, Sudha Raghunathan, Aruna Sairam, all of these people, Mandolin Srinivas sir would always say, can you play it on those small ones? My mandolin sounds really good in that. At that time, that was the only speaker I had.
Okay.
Later, the day Neumann said they came out with the KH series 120 and the 310s, you wouldn't believe, I went flat down, I didn't test anything, I just ordered. I still remember. I was one of the first to order that. And lo and behold, it came to my studio. The moment I kept it, I started hearing it. The first thing was, it was sweet. Very sweet. Number two, Indian music has a certain ethos. Classical music has a certain ethos. There is a style, the genre has something to it. We are not in the loud spectrum of music.
Correct.
We are not into something like a rock or a big orchestral sound. We have a certain ethos to our sound. This monitor had a very similar ethos. The 310s, KH 310s.
Okay.
they would sound very nice at optimal levels. You're not running it too loud. And even at soft levels, a sitar would continue to sound sitar. The dynamic range was very good. Some of the monitors that I have owned, which were not Neumanns, the difference was when you keep it in a low volume, it gives a certain tone to it. And in a sweet spot, it would open up and sound really good. With Neumanns, I can put hands down whether you're in a low level, be it the 120s or the 310s. At the low level, it will have the same integrity amongst this frequency spectrum and to enough loudness, up to probably 85 decibels of hearing. It would give a very, very neutral, dynamic sound.
Correct.
I always wondered if the 310s were manufactured by a guitarist. Was he someone who would have worked on the 310s? Because sitar, veena, all of these instruments would sound crisp, clean. Sarangi.
Correct.
Would sound clean. It will not give the unnecessary HF that you hear from other tweeters, like a beryllium tweeter or something, that would give a... It wouldn't do that. It would just shave off somewhere, but there is a bit of a hype, something that, where I said, the second one, inspiration. You need inspiration.
Correct.
I'm not saying it's colored, but it just has that kind of an inspiration in the high frequency.
Yes.
So I filled up my studio with the 310s.
Okay.
I don't have the 120, but I have its father.
Okay.
The KH110, which still is so amazing sounding. To me, from the recordings, from the artist, to when they come and hear to our recordings, they should feel, wah, what a nice feeling. No, it's not like, oh, great, I don't want that, I want this, wah, this is beautiful. And the moment they feel it, they give themselves more into their instrument, they give themselves more into their creativity.
Correct.
And they come back and they hear and they would be like, this is beautiful. Even Mridangam, for example, is a very tough instrument for you to capture.
Correct.
Because it's small, two microphones so close to each other, the right hand bleeding into left, left bleeding into right. If you use just dynamics, you don't get the sheen. If you use condensers, it's all about bleed. So it's a fight to get the sound right. Especially in Mridangam, you have two types of Mridangam. Kappi, Kuchi, the Kappi is a more mid-rounded one.
Okay.
Those never translate on monitors very well. If you put a flat monitor that is mastering grade, you just do a recording and play it back, the artist would say, why is it sounding so flat and why is it not right? The process of engineering, you need it.
Correct.
But the artist is not inspired.
Correct.
For me, Neumanns were a blessing. The 310s were a blessing. The 110s, the KH110, which is the 120 now, is a blessing because in the process of production, it really translates like a sweet candy to your ear, It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I'd love to add to it, in fact, because Indian music is, lack of a better word, is very monophonic. It is more about the melody. It's more about the sur, the intricacy of how well you can perform in sur and in expression. Unlike Western music, which has harmonies, which has, a very multi-layered, multi-voice, polyphonic nature. Indian music is very monophonic. However, being monophonic, it is very multi-timbral. So when you say sitar, a sitar, though the player plays only the melody, you can hear the sympathetic strings along with it. If there's a sarangi, you can hear the resonance of sarangi. If it is, say, tabla or pakhavaj or mridangam, it's so the instruments, the nature of music is very monophonic, but the sonics are very multi-timbral, are very rich, and the way, in my experience, the 120s, the way they translate, the moment the artist comes out of the live room, and the moment, because a lot of times it has happened that going to a studio, we feel that high and we feel that energy and we feel that magic in a particular take, but the moment you bring it back to your studio, you don't feel it. You just don't feel the hit of it. So I think the KH series monitors have been very elemental in keeping everything at a particular standard, and it has kept at least my process, far from discrepancies and far from I mean, bad judgments.
See, with the 310s, what is wonderful about just the monitor itself is its mid-range.
Correct.
See, the 120 is a blessing in a way because it has only one crossover, so no phase issues. But the 310s have two crossovers. Where it compensates is the mid-range.
Okay.
The mid-range is so good that you can feel, you can actually, in a speaker pair, the phantom center is something that is very important for anybody who works in engineering, in mixing. There are many speakers that I've owned where the timing would change. You know, I'm talking of microseconds. You just can't hear the phantom center. You know, phantom center is where you hear something bang at the center while you don't have a speaker, but you have only speakers on the left and right.
Correct.
The 310s have unfailingly had exceptional phantom center despite any deviations in orientation or the room owing to the mid-range. This helps in getting, and Indian music is mostly mid-range. We hardly have instruments that go sub-low.
Correct.
We don't have instruments that go supersonic high. We're not in that kind of a sound spectrum. We do have beautiful instruments that have sheen, like a sitar, for example. Even veena doesn't have a spectrum as a sitar. In fact, North Indian instruments have a much more resonating characteristic to it. A sarod, a sitar, a sarangi has so much that comes out. As you said, multi-timbral sound. It's beautiful. In South India, if you see, it's very monotonic. Whether it is mridangam, whether it is a veena, whether it is a pulangural. We call it pulangural and not a flute.
Okay.
You know, like a bansuri, we say pulangural because only we have a mid-range. There is no bass flute concept there.
Okay.
It's only mid-range flute and a high flute.
Okay.
It's just this small. So, all of this are so well translated with the 310s owing to its mid-range.
Yes.
That is where everybody gets inspired. And in that process, 310s have been there on my desk and it would be the only monitors, and I hope it continues to be my only monitor. Because it's been so inspiring to have the 310s.
Fantastic. That's amazing. In fact, because as far as being a session player is concerned, I think it is also very much dependent on the music producer or the composer to, instinctively capture the performance. Because after all, it's a performance, and taking the best of the performance becomes a very crucial thing. Also, coming to the lower side of Indian classical instruments, tabla or pakhavaj, if we consider, have, or even tanpura, have these very lesser heard lower end frequencies. And so how do you place them in a mix? As an engineer, I'm asking, because you've mixed some of the most iconic pop songs that have come out of South films, or even independent tracks like Enjoy Enjami and Arabic Kutu and all these things. So these tracks have somehow set a benchmark for sonic, I should say, for sonics and for young musicians to inspire from. As far as translation is concerned, how do you deal with these lower end frequencies, the whole band below 80 hertz, where you have to deal with subsonic frequencies? And
see, I have depended on subwoofers in my life because, to be very honest, why did I depend on subwoofer? It's not because I wanted lows, if I have to be very honest to you. It's because having worked with Indian classical music and Indian music per se, I'm not talking of Bollywood kind of sound. I'm talking of true Indian instrumentation. I've always missed on thumps and pops and all the sub-low noises that comes from thuds on the instrument, on my floor to the microphone, gets missed out because I never had a full range speakers. With the 310s, I had the KH805s.
Okay.
The subwoofer.
Okay.
The sub, when I added, it came as a requirement for me because there was so much sonically, because we are also dependent on EQ graphs to show us whether there are unnecessary sub-lows coming and then you cut. For me, visual is a reference, okay, but I won't hear them. I really want to hear them. So I added the KH805 in my studio, and after adding a full range speaker system, which is a KH310 along with the 805, I started hearing so much more with our own instruments. For example, pakwaj. If you record a pakwaj and hear it on a 120, you would probably hear 50% of the low end.
Okay.
If you play it on a 310, you will hear 65% of a low end. Because the 310s are not like super sub-low speakers. They are very flat on the low. They are not very punchy. But they are very musical. They tell you if it is there. But when I added the subwoofer, a whole new universe of sound comes.
Okay.
Because low end is so important in a mix. Why is low end important in a mix? Because it takes over the maximum sound energy when it comes to loudness. So we are all in a loudness war nowadays to have your tracks as loud as it can be, killing all the dynamic range. But we are forgetting that the low end is so important for you to judge and mix, for which you need a subwoofer.
Okay.
Why did I like KH805? Why didn't I go for any other sub-low? Especially being a tabla player, being a percussionist. I've even recorded a tampura, grounding it on a wooden floating floor,
Okay.
using a M147 microphone, tube microphone,
Okay.
without a shock mount,
Okay.
capturing just the physical vibrations of the tanpura through the mic stand that gave almost down to 43 hertz
Okay.
on a C tanpura.
Okay.
I have the sample with me. I can probably share it with you to put here.
Okay.
It is so deep, and that's when you realize when you have a tanpura, have it on you as a singer and play, you do have 40 hertz and 50 hertz that your body resonates to, for which you align yourself to a pitch.
Correct.
Have as a singer on your body, play it, keep your ear, and then play. Your creativity, your inspiration, your performance changes.
Another important thing is that you should not be watching this episode on your phones. Watch it in your... Sorry, coming back.
Yeah. So this is what happens. And the singers, they go into another world with those sonic vibrations. But today we have apps playing tanpura and then small Bluetooth speakers, and it just doesn't... It's not wrong with traveling outside of India. It is important. But don't forget what is more important. That's exactly what I'm coming to.
Correct.
So when I recorded the tanpura, the subs helped me understand tanpura actually has a sub, while in naked ear, you don't hear it.
Yes.
But when you keep it on you and play, you hear it.
Yes.
That is exactly what my penance in sound is for Indian music. This is where I've been into. In this process, why did I choose the KH805? Not many subwoofers have lot of options for phase relationship. You either have a in phase or a 180 degree out of phase.
Okay.
Correct?
Okay.
Most of the subwoofers that you have, you can either put it in phase or you put it 180 degree out of phase. Neumanns have fantastic option of moving the phase every 45 degrees. It's so amazing. You can go 45, you can go 90, you can go 135, and then you do 180, and then you can reverse it by adding another 180. Why is it important? Because all of us, there is no anechoic chamber that somebody is going to sit into for a perfect acoustics. Whatever room you have, with especially being in India with limited resources and the kind of projects that I do, specifically classical folk, which are not very vitamin M friendly, as I would call it, we have to play with what we have, right?
Correct.
And in my room, I do have deviations. I have a wooden room, but I want reflections for me when I mix.
Correct.
Because I do not want it. I do have a mastering mixing room, which is very clean. But this room is where I produce. So there are so many deviations my own room has. Standing waves.
Correct.
I can only fix it with phase correction. Neumann gives me so many options to phase correct.
Okay.
Apart from that, it has a parametric EQ.
Okay.
Which means, despite that, if you have a dip or a notch up. You can choose that. It has a Q factor and then compensate it. Apart from that, if you still do not want, some rooms will have unnecessary subsonic lows, pretty loud.
Okay.
You still have low cut, you can still enable. All of this functions as a family for you to tune the bass. So if someone is actually sensitive and really searches for that kind of a low-end perfection, the Neumann subs are musically designed.
Okay.
They are not technically designed. They are musically designed for you to tune it to a point where they marry itself to the satellites and you get a very optimal sound for a room that may not be perfect. That is why I love the KH 805.